The Legislature in Guåhan is back in session. We were on motions. Senator Blas, you are recognized. Oh, I'm sorry, we did not get to motions yet. We're still in second reading. Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding House rules, I move to place Bill number 154-30.
I guess we need a motion to get back to motions.
Can we go back to go to motions?
There's a motion to go to motion. Notwithstanding the rules, return to motions on our agenda. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Now we are in motion. Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding House rules, I move to place Bill number 154-37 LS as amended by the committee and introduced by myself, Senator Frank Blas Jr., and Senator Christopher M. Dueñas. An act to extend the 2023 Government of Guam Group Health Insurance Plan DOA/HRD/EB-RFP-GH1-23-001 to December 31st, 2023. This is as substituted, ma'am, by the committee. As amended. Sorry, as amended.
All right, the copy I received from the clerk says, as substituted by the Committee on Human Resources, Hagat and Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, Bill number 154-37 LS, as substituted. On that motion, Senator Tello Taitugui, you are recognized. Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
I'll yield to Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just as a point of information, the Committee on Rules was in receipt of the committee report for Bill 154 at 8:57 this morning, and the committee is currently reviewing the report, and that review we're anticipating should be completed by lunchtime, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Barnett.
On the
Blas motion, yes.
Is it on the website? Can I ask?
There's a point of inquiry. Would you yield to that question, Senator Barnett?
Is it on the website?
I think it's not. If it's not been cleared by CORE, then it's not on the website yet.
So the committee report is not on the website. Thank you.
Madam.
Is it on the... All right. Senator Barnett, on the point of inquiry, you are
Yes,
recognized.
the point of inquiry, it's not on the website, ma'am. It'll be posted up on the website pending completion of the Committee on Rules review of the committee report. At that time, it'll also be sent over to the clerk's office.
When it's sent to the clerks will be able to put it on the drive. All right, so we're on the motion. On the motion to place on the agenda, is there any objection? There's an objection, so all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion fails.
Thank you.
Wait, sorry. Wait, what? All right, motion fails.
Madam Speaker, I have a recess, please.
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute recess. We're back from recess. Senator Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to reconsider the actions of the body relative to the placement of Bill 154-37 LS as substituted.
There's a motion to reconsider, notwithstanding the rules. Is there any objection to reconsidering that motion? There's no objection. Motion carries. We will now reconsider the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to reconsider to place Bill number 154-37 LS as substituted by the Committee on Human Resources, Agaña, Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, introduced by myself, Senator Frank Blas Jr., and Senator Christopher M. Dueñas. It's an act to extend the 2023 Government of Guam Group Health Insurance Plan DOA/HRD/EB-RFP-GH1-23-001 to December 31st, 2023. I've been informed by the chairman of committee rules that as we speak, the report is actually being uploaded into the website.
All right, so there's been a motion to place the bill as substituted onto the session agenda. Is there any objection? There's an objection.
Just a point of information.
Point of information. Senator Taitigui, you're recognized.
I just would like to hear from the committee on
Point of inquiry.
Yeah,
Would the Committee on
regarding
Rules
the-
Chairman yield to a point of inquiry? Please state your inquiry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's just to request again whether the committee report is on the website. As I just checked right now, it is not on the website. So I just wanted to...
Would the committee chair yield to that question? Senator Brown.
I will yield, ma'am. The committee report review has been completed by the Committee on Rules, and the senator is correct. It is not on the website at this second, but it is currently being uploaded, ma'am. So within 5 minutes to 10 minutes, it'll be up on the website, if not sooner. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator. Again, on the motion to place Bill number 154-37 LS onto the session agenda as substituted, is there any objection? There's an objection. All in favor of putting it on the agenda, please raise your hand. Motion carries. We're still on motions. Are there any other motions? Senator Taitigui, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, then I would like to make a motion that Bill 154-36 not be heard for 5 days, allowing for the open government law to hear this. I'm sorry, say again. 37, I'm still in the 36th Guam Legislature. So 154-37, to hear that and make a motion that we don't hear it until it allows that 5-day rule, the open government law, to be posted on the website from the time it's posted.
The hearing's already completed, so there's a motion to not consider the bill, despite it being on our agenda for 5 more days. On that motion, is there any objection? Is there any objection?
I'm going to have to object.
There's an objection. All in favor of delaying consideration of the bill for 5 days, please raise your hand. Motion fails. So we are now still on motions. Is there any other motion? If not, then pursuant to our earlier motion, we will... Senator Blas,
I move to go back to committee of the whole for the purpose of continuing the discussion on the budget bill.
All right. On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We will resume in committee of the whole on the budget bill.
The committee of the whole is called back to order from recess and from session. Folks, chapter 12 is now open. Miscellaneous provisions. I'm really hoping, colleagues, that you have taken a look at your amendment. If they've already been proffered and passed in the previous chapters, when I come to you and you don't need to speak on it, just wave at me that we pass on, we move on from it, okay? It's not I think we reached already plus 40 and everybody seems to be rushing to submit amendments. All right? Thank you, and with that, folks, you all have a copy of the amendments. They're all stapled together. Any additional will be behind this pack. Look at the group of amendments you got, they're stapled. If they're not stapled, then I don't know what list you got. They're stapled based on the order they came in.
I was hoping we're going to go section by section of the bill so we can discuss those sections as well.
No, we're going to go by date and time received, okay? Because that was the motion in the very beginning. First come, first serve. Unfortunately, they'll be out of sequence based on the section, but I'll be able to move. And if one
What
is
do we
settled,
have
the other's
questions
done.
on the sections,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, that don't have amendments yet, because we have questions on those? Yeah, just some discussion on some of these other sections of the bill.
Okay, but let's make it very clear. The chapter's already open. No new amendments. If you want to amend an amendment, I'm fine. But no new amendments. Everything is open season now. We're wide open on chapter 12. We will begin with Senator Tello. You have, gosh, 3 or 4 in a row. Or 5 or 6. Ma'am, please begin. The first one is on the Guam Parole Board Stipend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues. I do realize that we are on a tight schedule right now, so I'll try and make it as brief as possible. This amendment, colleagues, is on page 124 of Chapter 12, and this is on line 8 and 9, and it's to amend the Section 17 of Chapter 12 of the bill, where it says Section 17 Parole Board Stipends. And what it does, it just crosses out this section of the Parole Board Stipend Guam Code annotated. Here, the reason why I'm doing this, for the last, since 2019 that I'm aware of, we have allowed stipends of $250 per board member as they serve on the parole board. And we all know this is a very difficult board to serve on. There's not a lot of people in line, wanting to be on this board. And then at the same time, it's important to have some kind of also some other kind of training when going on this board. So, this body has been looking at providing stipends every year, but the Guam Code Annotated does not. If you look at the law in the Guam Code Annotated, it doesn't require any stipends for the board members for this. And the reason why I'm striking this out, because I think this is in the need of having a public hearing. There's been nothing, no bill that's been introduced, to even discuss about changing the law, the current law, to allow for stipends. And it makes you wonder, this is going to be a long conversation, and to understand why this was changed. And it doesn't look good as well that the budget was created by somebody who sits on the board. And I think there's a huge conflict of interest, and I don't want it to look like we're favoring certain members of the OFB team who sits on a board to allow something like this when we should take this on the floor, introduce legislation, discuss this, have the public be involved with the discussion on changing the law. The budget bill appropriates The budget bill also allows certain reports and requirements that are needed to accompany the budget bill. But now we're in this budget bill changing the laws of Guam. And we all know that there's a process where the public is involved and can provide their input. Now, in the legislation, it's still in the budget bill, it still allows for a $250 stipend, which is the highest paid amount to a board member. And in the budget bill, we still allow that. I'm not taking away that. But I just think that if we're going to discuss changing a law, then it should be done openly and with public input and those stakeholders. The Guam police to be involved. So that's basically what my amendment does. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I ask my colleagues to please support this, and I'm looking forward to anybody who want to introduce legislation to change the current Guam law. But let's do it transparently. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Does anyone like to speak on this? And just for my colleagues' information, currently the board gets $250 a meeting. This actually just restricts it to no more than $1,000 a month, no more than that. So, and if you're questioning who put it in, I'm the one that put it in. And if you want to talk about that no other board member in the government of Guam receives more than $250, stop, DOE does. And it's hard enough trying to find members to participate in any of the commissions today. So if anybody wants to speak to this,
Mr. Chair,
amendment?
Mr. Chair, I do stand corrected. I believe there's also the PUC, which receives funding of up to $1,000 too as well. So I do stand corrected with that. But as far as any other boards and commissions that I know of, the next highest one is this one here. And like I said, this does not stop them from still receiving the annual $250 per stipend, but it does eliminate it, codifying it, and going through the proper procedures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to speak to this, Madam Vice, and then followed by Senator Kanata?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I do not rise in support of this amendment to eliminate the Guam Parole Board stipends. Having been in government for many years.
Point of information, I'm sorry, Madam Vice Speaker, but point of information, I'm not eliminating, this amendment does not eliminate at all the stipend that's already in the budget bill that allows $250 for the board. It does not do that. All I'm doing is eliminating the codification of this. That's all. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption, but I just want to make it clear.
Okay. Next time, address me before you address the colleague speaking. Madam Vice?
Mr. Chair, I still do not rise in support of this amendment. I want to share with you that the commission members that are on this Guam Parole Board, a lot of them have been there for a while now. It is true, based on your statements, that it is very hard to find a commission member to literally step up to the plate. A lot of times when the governor or the administration sends appointees down, of course they have to go through the scrutiny of getting confirmed by this august body, having to do reporting requirements, and literally having to take away from time spent with family and work to do whatever the mission mandate is for the different commissions that are within the government of Guam. And those are usually created, boards and commissions are created not just to work a balance, but literally to adhere to the mandates of that specific program. And the Guam Parole Board has for many years literally worked, as far as I can remember, worked really hard. And I just want to say that this amendment will not, for me, will literally be taking away from what should be I guess that's codified because she's asking it to be repealed. So I have concerns about this amendment, Mr. Chair, and I really want to say thank you to the Guam Parole Board members who literally take time away from their families to literally work on looking at whether those who cases have been adjudicated and been convicted and spent their time and done their time. Each of them really have to go through each case individually that comes before then, and then even think about what happens, what the pros and cons are, to see if this defendant could be released or the prisoner could be released, and how would that prisoner be reintegrated into the community. So there's a lot of work there. And I know, as previously said, that a member that's in this room right now who's been a member for many, many, many years probably really wants to retire, but because of the work that needs to be done, has literally stepped up to the plate. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this amendment? Anyone else? Madam Speaker, do you want to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I support this amendment. It's very simple. It's not to take away their stipend that we granted them for the first time last fiscal year. Is to continue that stipend at $250, despite the law saying that it should be zero, that the parole board would receive no compensation. We are, by this amendment, going to continue to allow them $250 compensation for every meeting, up to $1,000 a month. What the amendment does that I like is remove the codification, and I agree. We're going to make this change. We could subject it to a hearing on a new bill, because it probably, we need to review all the compensation that we're paying all the boards. They're all over the place, and maybe just put some rhyme and reason to it so that we don't have to have this debate every year. But that's all. So I support the amendment. I support continuing the compensation to the parole board for fiscal year 2024. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just for clarification, this has been in the budget for the past 3 terms, 3 budget years. It's nothing new. Okay? So adding it on again didn't change anything.
A point of information, Mr. Chair, if I
Go
may.
ahead.
The stipends have been part of the budget bill for the last 3 terms. Yes, you're correct, Mr. Chair, but point of information is that this amendment, this inclusion, has not been in the budget bills in the last 3 terms. This is codifying it, changing the current law. That has not been in there for 3. But yes, you're right, the stipends have been there for 3 years, but not codifying it to change the current law.
All right. I'm just surprised that we funded it for the past 3 terms and then now we can't codify it. We'll move along. Anyone else like to speak? Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I kind of have to ask why we have it in the budget bill, because we have so many other boards and commissions in the government of Guam. I agree we need to look and standardize how we're going to address board compensation. Previously, it was $50 pretty much for every board and commission in the government of Guam. And there were actually years when the budget revenues were down that we actually provided no compensation to board members. And board members served for many years without compensation. So I think to avoid any sense of conflict, because yes, I mean, whether we're engaging in it or not, we just have to remove any appearance, because you do have a member of your staff that sits on the parole board, and I think that's laudable, because I think it's a tough commission to sit on. Nobody's breaking the door down to sit on this particular commission. But we do need to look at what we're doing, because I also see attempts to increase the Civil Service Commission and others that feel that a single evening should reward them of $250,000. Otherwise, I should quit my job and go sit on a board so I can just do this for a few hours a week. I think we really need to look at what we're doing and are we fairly compensating, because there are other critical operations in this government that need boards and commissions and board members to serve. I'm seeing as time goes on, there's less a desire, and it's sad. I understand. Very few people want to go through public scrutiny. They want to make decisions involving public money, but they don't want to go the scrutiny. I mean, look at most recently the issue of the Guam Visitors Bureau. If they're, board members have come out and said that if they have to file financial reports or financial disclosure reports, that they will step down because they don't want their finances to be revealed to the public of how much they do or do not earn. Certainly for those of us in public life, that's pretty standard. It's an expectation that we provide that disclosure. But in this particular case, I think we need to simply standardize how we address compensations to boards and commissions, not just here, there, and everywhere, have selective commissions and then decide that this is the amount that we're going to give them. Not too long ago, we had that whole issue also with Guam Housing, wasn't it? They said, oh, it's federally compensated, so we want to raise it to this amount. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd give up my day job if I can, for a few hours, earn $250 and serve on that board. So I support the amendment. I think we need to standardize this process. I think we need to have a public discussion. I see far too many things being thrown in this budget bill that really are not necessarily related to the budget, but are attempting to skirt the process of actually having these bills heard or standalone so that we can properly review them and deliberate them alone, by themselves, rather than simply dumping them into the budget bill, and what has essentially extended for many weeks beyond what is needed, this whole budget process, and delaying it literally up to the last hour because we continue to put really unrelated things because they have a dollar figure attached to them in the budget bill. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I do rise in support of the amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does anyone like to speak on this amendment? No. Senator Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. I support the amendment. Senator Tello asked me to. Just kidding.
Bad excuse, but okay. We can deal with that, Senator Nicholas.
But she does have some concerns about the manner in which this thing is going about. So I agree with her, and so I support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And for my colleagues' information, yes, my OLB director is on the board. He can't leave it because there's nobody that is being considered to be on the board. He's been trying to leave it for the past 2 years. Senator Blanche, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I appreciate the discussions that we're having with regards to this amendment, and I appreciate and I understand the concern that was brought by the author of the amendment. However, I am reading this amendment, and I'm reading it as presented in the budget bill, and I don't know what this does. And striking out just that provision, I mean, that language there, but if you look at the rest of it, the flow on it is gone.
And you're correct. If you strike out the first part, you strike everything that flows. So then the question would be, and that's my concern. Continue, Senator Blas.
And so,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, it does not do that.
I don't see that what you're saying, that they're striking out everything that flows.
Let's get a quick recess for legal to look at. Committee Hall is called back to order. Senator Blanche, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with legal counsel. Mr. Chair, I move to make an amendment to this amendment.
Okay.
And what it is basically to strike out, to continue to strike out, to read as follows as well, all the way to where it says board stipends. Just the words board stipends, that's underlined. Okay? That way there's clarity to this.
Okay,
Okay?
good.
Thank you.
Anybody have any objection to that? That's being put together by the clerk? None. Senator Roy, you had a point of inquiry or let me go back. There are no objection? That amendment passes. Now we're back on the amendment as amended. Senator Canata.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to find out the board's current status. Do you happen to know if the, point of inquiry?
Okay, well, let me ask our director who's on the board. Steve, point of inquiry, what's the status on the board?
Yes, good morning. Currently, there's a total of 5 positions on the Guam Parole Board, 4 of which are currently filled. Of the 4, 3 of them have already passed their legal term to serve on the board over the last year. I, as chairman, have been trying for the last 4 years to get people, to recruit people to come on board to serve in a capacity as their community service, basically to the program and to the government. It has been difficult, sir, and right now, like I said, I've been pleading with the governor, lieutenant governor, about trying to get people on this board, and it's very, very difficult right now to get anybody to come on board, let alone the stipends that we're actually offering these members to serve on the board. But it's not unique just to what makes the Guam Parole Board very unique as compared to any other board is basically it's very challenging. And one of the things that most people automatically just decide not to is the fear and the threats that we get as a board member. And that's the thing that really turns off people. We can't get anybody to serve. And I believe it's the only board in the government of Guam that the members are subject to such, how do you say, personal attacks, criticism, challenges, threats. And not only to the board members themselves, but you're talking about their families, their wives, their children, everybody else. So that's what makes this particular board very difficult to recruit members to serve on. Thank you.
Does that suffice, Senator Canata?
Yep, thank you.
Does anyone else like to speak on the amendment as amended? None. There is an objection. Do you need to close still?
Yes, just a really quick thing. I just wanted to mention to my colleagues, this amendment does not stop them from getting the 250. In fact, I think money should never be an object as to why individuals serve on boards. They're there to provide for their community, a way of giving back to the community. This board is a very difficult board, though. You're not going to get very many people who want to join it. That's why I'm thinking if we had a public hearing on this, if somebody introduced a bill to talk about, why was it that there was no stipends for all these years in the Guam Code annotated was never changed. I mean, if you ask me, 250 is not even enough for an individual to serve on a parole board because all of the issues that they have to endure. I have a very good friend who sits on the board she's actually taken self-defense courses, and carries a firearm just to be safe. There's no doubt that this board is a very difficult board, but I think we need to be transparent in the community and put this in front of them to allow the input of those stakeholders to decide if we give them a stipend that it's codified, so we don't have to be doing this and then the budget bill every year, which we've been doing for the last 3 years. It will no longer now be needed if it's codified. But let's see if 250 is enough. Maybe it might be a little bit more. But let's have the public input. If we're going to change a law, we should do it the way that was meant to be done, through a public hearing, through a bill, and the scrutiny of this body to determine. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and I ask my colleagues to please support. Thank you.
Thank you. There is one objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. 5, 6, 7, 8. Motion passes. We move on to the next one. The next amendment. Senator Tello.
Thank you,
Lines
Mr. Chair.
17 to 18, page 132.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just getting to that page. Colleagues, this is on page 132. And it begins on line 17 and 18. This amendment, it says it's the reporting requirements. The report shall detain, okay, let me just go back to the, what it's talking about. This is the ARP funding that was provided by the federal government to our governor for expenditures. And we've been requesting for years to have this report given to us on a monthly basis on the expenditures. Now, we know that the expenditures have to all be, or the funding has to be expended by FY23, December of FY24. So about a year to go. But many times, not even myself, but even reporters call me up to ask me, well, what is this actually being spent for? This has to do with contract service, but it doesn't say anything other than that, just contract service. It doesn't talk about who received the contract, how much that contract was awarded to. It's granted one thing that this body doesn't have control over the ARP funding. And we tried, made suggestions to the governor to utilize ARP funding for certain areas like DOE, for instance, public health, for instance. So what my amendment is just to allow more detailed information for this ARP funding that's being spent, because this is going to be useful for us today. Today, as we sit figuring out how much funding is given to certain agencies. Knowingly, if ARP funding was given to somewhere like the Post Commission, then I notice now we don't have any funding in here in the budget bill for the Post Commission, because I've noticed that $632,000 was given to the Post Commission from the ARP funding. Is it about 600? Yeah. So this is a way for us to see where we can utilize funding, general fund funding where we have control, and save us money. Maybe we can subsidize another agency who didn't get ARP funding. But most importantly, it's about transparency to the people of Guam. This money might come from the federal government, but it was meant for the people of Guam. Not just the governor of Guam, but the people of Guam. So they should be notified in every aspect. And this amendment simply is to include the amount of each contract awarded, the name and the business license number of the contract awardee, the name and business license number of all project bidders, product vendor name, business license number, and price quotes, and estimated completion date of project or delivery of final product. We wouldn't have had to do this, Mr. Chair, if the governor provided this information in the first place and made it much easier for us to understand where this federal fund is being spent and utilized. So I ask my colleagues for support on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone like to speak to this amendment? Senator Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this particular amendment. There's nothing wrong with shining a light to see, who's getting the largesse, and it'll make the fund a little less slushy too. So, yeah, I support it. Let's shine a light. Let's see who's getting the dough. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Looking around, none. Senator Teller, you want to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really quick, I appreciate your support, everyone's support on this. And, I know Senator Barnett has been one individual who is constantly looking at these reports and even going further to find out where the spending is being done. So I hope this amendment will help all of us, to find out where the money is going. And maybe next year's budget, we'll have a better understanding what areas really need to be funded. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any objections to this amendment? Seeing none, motion passes. Senator Tello, on your next amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my colleagues. I'm sorry to seem like I'm overtaking this, but this is, I put all of my amendments in way in advance, so I appreciate going down there, but of course I don't mind this going from page to page, but anyways, okay, so moving on as fast as I can. This amendment basically, Mr. Chair, is on pages 132. It begins on 132 to 133, lines 23 to 13. Of course, 23 on page 132, and then lines 13 on 133. And this basically, Mr. Chair, strikes out Section 31 altogether, the special pay for public defenders. This is an area in which I think that we should all look at other ways of adjusting pay parity amongst our attorneys. And I think it's something that we should have done through a pay plan. I mean, it didn't cost DOA to put together a pay plan or to do a study on those amounts that are given to certain, positions in the government. And I think the attorneys need that same type of clarity as well. And I don't think DOE would need any funding at all to try and determine that kind of pay parity for attorneys. But I don't think the budget bill is a place for this, Mr. Chair. I think that we should take our, not take our time, but definitely take a moment to really thoroughly look at this and do it publicly. And I support any type of study that DOA may have, or even the attorneys getting together themselves, but I just don't think it should be in this legislation, in the budget bill for this. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and ask my colleagues for their support. And I believe this particular amendment, or this particular section of the budget was actually, wasn't able to even get on the session agenda at this point. So I think there's a lot of variables that need to be in place before we even try to address this type of legislation. So I just ask for my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Canante, you had your hand up?
I object to the amendment, and then can we just call for the vote?
You object, and you're calling for the vote?
And I object to the call of the vote to allow others to speak, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
No, there's a motion ready to call for the vote. We'll ask. There's already one objection.
I'll speak on the amendment, sir. I'll
Okay.
be brief. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I will disclose for the record that I did work at the Public Defender Service Corporation for almost 15 years of my career out of the 40-some years that I've been with the government of Guam. I will note for the record that the Public Defender Service Corporation provides for legal services to the indigent community, those who cannot afford to hire an attorney for themselves. They do criminal, juvenile, domestic, and other cases. Mr. Chair, these attorneys have literally been given to them as it relates to the criminal cases. We can't pick and choose, or they can't pick and choose what cases they can get if they qualify for the services and there's no conflict of interest. These attorneys have to take the cases, and I just want to say that taking the pay away from them based on all the work they've done, I know that there has been a back and forth between the Public Defender Service Corporation and another organization within the government of Guam, and I just think that taking away from the public defenders will literally be detrimental to all the work that they've done. Public defender has been around for more than 5 decades, 6 decades, providing legal interpretation. We literally, to break the number of cases that the courts had to appoint, we really had to divide Public Defender Service Corporation into the alternative public defenders so there could be more representation. And that was a way to get creative to provide more support for the indigent community. And I'm saying that if we strike these for them, that it will be taking away from the vital work that they do to protect and to provide those legal services to those defendants, those clients, those in the indigent community that really need legal services. So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to object to this amendment.
Thank you. Does anyone else? Senator Brown?
Oh, well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of the amendment. You know, I don't think the budget bill is the place, again, where we should be addressing these type of issues. I mean, the bill concerning this very issue was put forth before the Rules Committee, the last Rules Committee meeting we had, and it didn't pass. And so the attempt to include this in the budget bill is a little concerning. You know, I'm sorry, right now with where we're heading, you know, these are not my biggest priorities in my current capacity of looking at these issues. I think we need to deliberate them outside of the budget. You know, we're here wanting to do pay raises for attorneys. I'm sure the people of Guam are just jumping up and down at this priority with everything else that they're facing. If there are any attorneys that I want to see pay raises are prosecutors at the Attorney General's office, so that we actually can get some real convictions on the crimes that continue every single day in our community to be perpetuated upon our people. Now there I'd be willing to talk about it, but not in the budget bill. I think we should deliberate that separately, because if we're going to continue to raise everything all around and continue to make it more difficult to get qualified attorneys to work as prosecutors to actually represent the people, which is what their job is to do, to represent the people in court, to protect our public interests and certainly ensure that these criminals are put away or serve their time or whatever it is they need to do to pay back compensation for any harm that they've brought against our people. I mean, look at that situation. I know I brought it up yesterday, but isn't that crazy? An ambulance gets stolen when, you know, they're going to a home to respond to a member of our community that is in need of health care, need in times of emergency to be taken to the hospital. That's the kind of stupidity and nonsense and harmful crimes that are committed against our citizens. That is not okay. I hope they find out the responsible party or parties and by all means prosecute them. But we need to have qualified prosecutors and we need to have incentives. There's where I want to see incentives. You know, it's like the auditors at the public auditor. I want them to have the sharpest pencils. That's where I want to invest our money, but I want to have that public debate at a public forum. I don't think these things that continue because it's our special interests. It's not that the public defenders are not important, but I think it's also a question of what is most important. This, to me, is not at the top of the list. And sticking it in the budget bill is an attempt to get around a decision members of the Committee on Rules made not to put this on. It's just a way to get around it. Stick it in the budget so, you know, the governor has no choice. She has to sign it. Or we have to override it because we have to get a budget. So let's just throw it all in and make it law. And I just don't think with everything else that's coming, and it's coming, you know, when we have that much money owed at the Guam Memorial Hospital that's not getting paid, then that tells me cash is getting tight. And I'm sure the governor, as much as I don't agree with her on a number of issues of how she runs her administration, I'm sure she doesn't want to see what's happening at the hospital, because her whole campaign was, you know, on the idea that, you know, she's a nurse and she cares and she wants the health care of our people to be better. But when you can't get basic supplies up there, when we have the head of the hospital sitting over there telling us, oh, we just try and work with other vendors, like we buy that nonsense. There's too many, there's not, you know, vendors standing in line to not get paid. They got to make a living too. They got to pay their people. They got to pay for the supplies that they're getting. When that's not happening, when the most basic level of care that matters in our island is not being paid, this to me is not a priority. This is not, and even in terms of legal services, important but not the top priority that we need when we need more prosecutors. Now, if you want to talk about that, I'll be happy to debate that at another public forum, but I'd rather see that in actually prosecuting the criminals that are committing direct harm and abuse to our people. At some point, we got to say enough is enough. I'm already there. I'm disgusted with what I'm seeing happen in our community every day and how unsafe our community is. But yet, no, we want to worry about pay raises at the university and pay raises at public defender and pay raises everywhere. And all of this is coming home to roost, colleagues. You'll be here in this term to start feeling it. Because I'm going to be very curious how we're going to pay for it all. Pay for all the promises that hopefully are going to get us elected and re-elected forever and ever and make us Governor of Guam. So I definitely rise in support of this amendment. There's another day and another forum to debate and discuss this issue, but I don't think the budget bill is the place for it. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Before I ask anybody else to speak, I was asked by both the author of the amendment and the to recess for a couple of minutes while they settle whatever they need to settle on this amendment. Thank you. So it will be a quick recess, hopefully. Committee hall is called back to order. Senator Canata, you had something you want to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I would like to withdraw my previous objection to the amendment, and I would like to make an amendment to the amendment on line 23, page 132, line 13, page 133, to amend section 31, chapter 12 of the bill to read on pay adjustments. The Public Defender Service Corporation shall allocate 6% increase in compensation for attorneys who work for the Public Defender Service Corporation and the alternate public defender from the appropriations made in section 2, and to allow legal counsel to make technical corrections. Thank you.
My colleagues, if you can look in your packet, it's the very first, the root thick one. Second to the last.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, is the second to the last on the first packet we were given prior to session beginning.
Okay, did everybody find it? In other words, I hope you all heard it. He withdrew his objection, added an amendment to the amendment to add the pay adjustment to the public defender. He maintained all the strike-through that was in the first amendment and just added the pay adjustment. Okay? So does anyone like to speak to the amendment? To the amendment? Yes, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this amendment to the amendment, especially because earlier in the budget bill, I think when we were on the AG's portion, there was an amendment that passed to allow attorneys in the Attorney General's office to receive 6%. And so this would allow all the attorneys in the Public Defender Service Corporation to also receive a 6% increase. And I'm also supportive of this because I'm hoping that there's another amendment that will pass regarding the pay plan, a study. And we heard from Mr. Byrne that he is willing and looking to do one this year. So I support this for fiscal year 2024. It's a temporary provision while they are working on the pay plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone would like to speak to the amendment? To the amendment?
Yeah.
Senator Brown.
Well, I still don't think it addresses the issue because, okay, we give the Attorney General 6%, let's give the Public Defender 6%, let's give everybody else 6%. It still levels the playing field, and I don't want to see the level playing field. You know, whether you like the Attorney General or not, he was elected by the people of Guam. And I am very concerned about what it actually means in terms of the actual compensation for. Because I'm going to look at priorities, as I did with the Public Auditor's Office. I want the Public Auditor's Office to have the highest compensation. Looking at now this billion-dollar budget to make sure that the people's money is being properly spent. And by all means, if it isn't, then hold those parties accountable. But I also will say, because the current Attorney General was elected by the people of Guam, and yes, we've seen the exodus of attorneys leaving the AG's office, you know, maybe personality issues, I don't know. I don't really care. What I do care is our ability to be able to provide the incentive for attorneys to work at the Attorney General's office. Because that, to me, is a priority right now, my dear people. Every single day, I don't even like looking at the newspaper, listening to the news anymore. I have to because of the job I'm currently in, but if I wasn't in the legislature right now, the negativity of where our community has come to now is not better. Maybe we make more money, maybe we drive nicer cars, maybe we travel more, whatever it is we think has added to our quality of life. Our safety and our well-being is down. It continues to deteriorate every single day and every single month that goes by. And unfortunately, because our community has disintegrated to the level that it has, that we have the level of criminal activity on this island, including what we just seen with our ambulance being stolen and damaged. Can you imagine now how many of our people are not even going to have basic ambulance service because we have another ambulance down, not just because it was stolen, but because of the amount of damage they did to that ambulance? We should be outraged. And who's going to prosecute those people that stole that ambulance if they actually find who did it? The Public Defenders Corporation? I just don't see it. We should have the ability as a government to prioritize where we want to invest the people's money. And I'm sorry, but when you go out there to the people of Guam next year, if you choose to run again, you're not going to be telling them that, oh my goodness, our priority was the Public Defenders Corporation. Because we just gave them the same amount as the AG's office. So we raised the AG's office by 10, let's give every other attorney 10. We should be able to prioritize where the need is the greatest. And we're not doing this, colleagues, by dumping this once again in the Budget Act so we can cover our special interest departments in this government. We're failing our people we have done, look at this. I've never seen the chaos of a budget like this, to be honest, Mr. Chair. And except for Senator Tina, I've been through more budgets than anybody else here. You know what normally happens, Mr. Chair? The majority sits down and they actually put the budget together. You've seen, your father has done them. There's not a lot of, in the past, in the old days, in this session hall, there wasn't even debate on this floor. The budget bill went to vote, and that was the end of the story. And now here we are, and the majority of the amendments are here, except for Senator Tello, or on your side of the aisle. This is not the place for this debate and discussion, this continued arbitrary, let's give 6, let's get, you know. I think I made my point, Mr. Chair. I think we need to stop this practice of doing these pay raises in the budget, be it the Public Defenders Corporation or whoever else it may be. With that, I object to the amendment
Thank you. Senator Fisher, would you like to speak on the amendment to the amendment?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Chair. I'm still trying to catch my breath. I heard somebody here on this floor say that they didn't want to level the playing field, even though that is the very essence of American constitutional democracy. No person is above the law. No person is entitled to better representation, and that includes the people of Guam. We are talking about indigent individuals who cannot afford an adequate criminal defense. That strikes at the very heart of our system. And I'm happy to say that I can join the Supreme Court of the United States over the last 80-some years in saying that. I want to level the playing field. I do not want the Attorney General of Guam to have an advantage over the people who they are accusing of committing crimes. That could be any one of us in this room. Any one of us, any member of our family can be accused of committing a crime, and if they can't afford it, what are we going to do? Are we going to give them an underpaid attorney and congratulate ourselves? No, we're not going to do that. We are going to level the playing field. What is most important right now is the provision of fairness and adequate defense for those of us in this community who are accused, rightfully, we enjoy the presumption of innocence, or wrongfully, and it happens. I've been in the trenches. I have provided criminal defense, and if you think people are not being convicted unfairly and contrary to law, then you have just got another think coming. I promise you there are people sitting up there at the Department of Corrections right now who did nothing wrong except for get buffaloed by a very well-funded Guam agency that cares nothing about this. Well, I won't go that far, but I will say, and I will reiterate, that we need to provide adequate criminal defense to these people. I don't need to continue to hammer on that. And I need to say this as well. The priority is not the Attorney General's office, sir. The priority is preserving our obligation to provide everything we can to those of us in the community who are disadvantaged and didn't get raised with you look around the room, there's 15 people here, they've never had to suffer like that. I've never had to suffer like that. I have had the good fortune to see that my brothers and sisters have had to suffer. And I am not going to undercut their ability to maintain their freedom in this society. I just find it insane that we would say we don't want a level playing field. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Tello,
Thank
on
you,
the
Mr.
amendment
Chair.
as amended.
Wanted to give a point of information, when you're talking about a level playing field. I think, if you look at the burden of proof requiring a level playing field, prosecutors have a greater burden of proof and burden of persuasion, and thus more work in representing the people of Guam. And that's the reality. Prosecutors must prepare for criminal cases before filing. They present cases to the magistrate judge and before the grand jury for felony charges and produce discovery and present to jury trials. So defense attorneys don't do all that work, but prosecutors do they have the burden of proof. So just wanted to reiterate that, and that's the difference between the two. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Point of information.
Yes, Senator Fisher.
Prosecutors work hard. Defense counsel, I've been both, work just as hard, if not harder, than prosecutors. It's all put on the prosecution's plate. They've got the GPD, they've got the investigators, they come out there, they cook it up for them. All they have to do is walk it in the door. The public defenders have to figure out how to put together a defense, and they don't have near the resources. Not near the resources that the AG's office have. There's my point of information.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the Senator Duenas?
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chairman. I think that what we're discussing here is whether or not we're going to maintain an incentive for the prosecution division and those who take up that line of practice. But I think what we're also talking about is this hodgepodge approach, unfortunately, that we've taken to the process, particularly in this area. And that's why I think there was an earlier speaker that was discussing the issue of the study. Because, Mr. Chairman, I think, and when I was asked about this earlier by several colleagues, I think the issue is here, we can just keep this going unless you're going to say that there's not going to be incentive pay for prosecutors. 15 here, 15 here. 6 here, 6 there. I mean, it's basically perpetual. So this does boil down to a philosophical issue, perhaps. But it also does boil down to the compensation should be based on what studies bear out, what market is there. We've been talking about this perennially now, from agency to educational institution. So I just want to interject that, do I not support the fact that public defenders deserve adequate compensation, and based on a study and based on that compensation that should be arrived at? I do. But I personally am going to maintain that I believe it is important to maintain an incentive for prosecutors. So we're talking possibly about two different things here. But when it all boils down, that's the first question, and many of us in this hall are going to have differences on that issue, respectfully. But I don't think that the difference between that issue and adequate compensation are the same thing. So these things are designed and built into the structure of how these particular institutions bring forward their budget request. And that's where I think the coherence and the clarity is meted out on a standalone process. So I could be tagged as not wanting to assist with the ongoing compensation debate to the public defender. I'll accept it because I want to see this done in that manner. But I will stay on the record of saying that I do support and I do believe that the prosecution division should have an incentive for what they undertake. So I'll leave that on the table. Like I said, of course, that's a debate in the community right now. That's a debate overall. So whether you believe in that or not, but I think that I do not want to unfairly associate that with just compensation, because that's a philosophical difference in terms of whether or not, you think there should be an incentive or not an incentive. But the other way to treat this is it's a runaway if all you're going to do is keep chasing it and not break it down to the brass tacks. What is the adequate compensation and what should it be called for at the public defender, and whether or not you believe there should be incentives for prosecution division. That's probably what little bit I had to add to this conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Draves. Does anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Yes, Senator Nicholas.
I might have something to add. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the amendment. Amendment to the amendment. Sometimes these processes kind of confuse me a bit, but I want to echo the sentiments of my good colleague, Senator Fisher. This is a very American thing to do. There's what I'm learning here as a senator is that there are many ways to get to where we need to go. We can do it in the budget, we can do it here, we can do it there. If it is something that we can mitigate here, then let's try to do it here. I do support the defense attorneys and everybody there. It's a good thing that we help prop them up too, because just like what he said, it could be any one of us. It could be our family members, and they're innocent or proven guilty, and some of them might not be able to pay, and this actually allows them some good quality defense. And again, I like to echo the same sentiments of my good colleague, Senator Fisher, and I support this amendment to the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nicholas. Does anyone else like to speak to this? Madam Vice Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, to reiterate my earlier statement from the amendment earlier as proffered, but to work and at least gives the Public Defender Service Corporation some sense of commitment that the compensation that we will be providing for all the work that they would do until a study that was also talked about that might be done, then I'm willing to also work with this. But I don't support not giving anything. And we quote, as previous speakers said, the passionate sentiments of the good senator from EPAN. This is providing legal representation, Mr. Chair, to the indigent community who cannot afford legal representation. And I, having been there and leaving there as an investigator and knowing that we can't choose our cases, if you qualify for what is provided in the enabling legislation for the Public Defender's Office, that case has to be done. And we have to give them that opportunity to get representation. And I know that there is a debate back and forth on who should get more. But I'm telling you, the work at the Public Defender's Office with the attorneys, providing for the indigent community, gives that fair playing field. Do I wish it could be more? Yes. I would be biased to say that. But again, this is an amendment that is presented to us in an effort to make the original amendment that is proffered go through, and I'm willing to work with that. So, Mr. Chair, I stand in support of this amendment, and I want to take the time to thank the attorneys within the Public Defender's Office and the Alternative Public Defender's Office for the work that they do, and including their staff. Thank you. Sana Masi.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? If not, Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, Mr. Chair, it's interesting as far as this discussion, the discussion that we're having, in that, you know, whether it's 12%, 6%, 10%, it just sounds like arbitrary figures. And, you know, it's interesting that over the last, I want to say 2 years, 3 years, we just go ahead and throw out an arbitrary figure and say that that's how much we're going to pay them. Despite a study or a lack of study. And despite whether or not these studies also include sustainability in paying it. You know, when we talk about parity, what do we give to the nurses? 15%? Then we gave to the police officers and the firefighters 18%. And we gave teachers 20%. And we gave the general pay plan 22%. Where do these figures come from? And now we're arguing here for 6%. Should it be more? Could it be more? Should it be less? Could it be less? We don't know. You know, I do recall that, although there was a team that was put together and there were studies that should have been done, and the team had said, no, we recommend 16%. For no reason whatsoever, the governor went in and said, no, I mean 20%. Then in another case, it was, okay, we recommend 20%. No, I recommend 22%. We must be so flush with cash that we can go ahead and just go ahead and give an arbitrary number and say, well, that's what we're going to go by. And then we're left scratching our head trying to figure out how we're going to fund this. And I'm looking at even the language that's being used. Special pay, bonus pay, incentive pay. We can't even pay what we owe. And we're going to promise more pay. What kind of budget is this? we don't want to take away from anything. And, I agree, and I came from law enforcement. That in the system of justice, defense is just as valuable as prosecution. We may not appreciate it, but that's how our system works. So my argument is not there. My concern is, where are we getting these figures? How are we backing it up? And down the road, how are we going to pay for it? I bring that concern up, Mr. Chair, because it's got to stop sometime.
Thank you
very much,
Senator
Mr. Chair.
Blas. Anyone else would like to speak? On the amendment, to the amendment? No one else? There is only one objection. So, Senator Guåhan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as with retiring speaker as well, is that, we're throwing numbers out here, and I hope it's not the way we're putting budgets together, just pulling it out of the air. And I think it behooves us to have a public hearing with experts and studies that are
Mr. Chair,
done.
on a point of information, please. I was under the impression that the amendment to the amendment on hand, that on the bill there was a public hearing and it did get
Yes,
some
there was.
favorable consideration. So I just need to note that for the record, sir.
Yes,
there was
a
our
public
colleague-
hearing.
Okay. In regards to the study, was there a study that was presented with that?
No, that you asked for there's a public hearing. It was a public hearing. It just didn't get out to core. That's the only thing. That's where
Okay.
it's hold up.
Well, again, as with the retiring speaker, is there a study being done? I mean, was it 6? Should it be really 15 or even really 20? And that's what I'm saying. I think it behooves us to really get to have a study and see the parity in regards to attorneys, and because we have attorneys not only in the public defender's office, but also attorneys within the courts. And those, I mean, are they all? Is it parity with all the attorneys and what they do? And so that's what I'm saying. Again, I agree in the sense that we shouldn't just be throwing numbers out there. And, is 6% the right number? Should it be more 8 or 15? I don't know. We don't know. That's not being presented to us. I mean, if the study was done and we showed, and okay, here are the figures between this percentage and that, you guys decide now between this and that, between this number and this number, okay. But that's not what we have before us. So again, we're asking to decide on something that we don't really know if this is the right thing to do. I mean, this is the right percentage. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Guåhan. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to the amendment, on the amendment to the amendment? If not, there's one objection. All in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please raise your hand. Motion passes. Now back to the amendment as amended. Are there any objection to that? Senator Tello, there's no objection, so you don't need to close. Oh. No, she's supporting Tello's amendment. Okay, there's no objection, my colleagues. That being said, the amendment, Senator Canata?
Oh, no. Can I just ask that we just continue to the second page to include the competitive wage study? Because, the August body, the genuine August body of this.
No. This is just this one. When we get to that amendment, then you can post it, because I think everybody's asking for it, so you'll be able to get a success on that one. Okay, that being said, that amendment
10-4.
passes. Okay, I gobbled it down. Now we're going to go to the next amendment. I'm hoping We are now on, let's see. Senator Tello is on the civil service.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleagues, the next amendment is on page 33 to 34. On page 33, it begins on line 25, and on page 34, it begins on line 7. And this basically what it does is strikes out the Civil Service Commission stipends. It's going from $50 up to $200. Again, Mr. Chair, for all the reasons, Civil Service Commission, it's not as grueling as the Parole Board, that's for sure, but it still requires much needed attention and information and research. But again, I think that this should be done, this amendment should be done through the eyes of the people if we're going to increase any kind of stipend, and it should be done so that input can be provided, not just by stakeholders, but for the people to come in front of us. So if anybody wants to introduce a bill and go through the process, I think that's the better way to do it, but not just continue to increase these stipends in this budget bill. So I ask my colleagues, just for the sake of time, Mr. Chair, and ask for everyone's support to support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Does anyone like to speak to the amendment? Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this amendment. I just don't know how these decisions get made, that we're going to particularly jump from one to the other, and we're going to increase this particular board and address this board over other boards. I think this thing needs to be publicly deliberated with regards, again, to the Civil Service Commission. These are drastic increases, colleagues. I have to tell you, I've never been in a legislature until this and the last one where money is just not a factor. And, public service has no meaning anymore, public contribution, because we are jumping literally from $50 to $250. There's not even a stop sign in between. My last life in the legislature, we actually were debating in the budget whether we even paid the stipends. And they were $50. And like I said, there were a number of budget years there were no stipends for board members. I don't particularly, big fan of the Civil Service Commission. There's a lot of things I'd love to change. Maybe I'm going to do that before I leave office. Because, wow, I don't know how well the public's being served by the status quo that the civil service these days continues to support. But wow, $200 to raise it up, their salaries to these amounts, what, $200 from $50 to $200? I mean, that's, we haven't even had real public discussion on this, and I just see these incredible jumps. Like money's nothing here. Money has no value here. The people's money has no value because we're doing pay raises, we're raising board stipends, and then we're trying to get from every source we can find, whether it exists or not, because I'm anxious to see the audit of our last fiscal year to know if we even have money and how much money do we have in comparison to the amount of money we've tried to appropriate over it, because we can't appropriate enough. I understand the needs out there are great, but my goodness. This, again, should not be our priority. I don't see any sense of fiscal responsibility. Is this something we should put in the Budget Act? The Guam Civil Service Commission, I bet if we did a survey in the public, how popular is the Guam Civil Service Commission and their decisions to the people of Guam? Wow, what their thoughts are. So I support this amendment. I just don't think this is how we should be dealing with board compensation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this amendment? Are there any objection to this amendment? There being none, there is an objection. Okay, all in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, then there's, motion passes. There's 8. We'll proceed to the next one. Senator Taidiwi, this is on GVB.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. thank you to my colleagues on that last amendment, trying to keep consistent, throughout the bill. Mr. Chair and my colleagues, this is on page 35. It begins on line 12. And the amendment includes, it reads, notwithstanding any provisions of law, the requirements for a Public Official Disclosure Act found on 4 GCA 13101 ESQ shall apply to all members of Guam Visitors Bureau Board Directors. Such reports shall be filed within 60 days of enactment of this legislation. Mr. Chair and colleagues, we are required to provide financials. Other board members and commissions are required to provide financials. Directors of agencies are required to provide financials. And here's an agency that oversees, and according to the budget, almost $23 million. $23 million of our hard tax-paying funds to go to an agency to decide who's going to get what share of this pie. And Mr. Chair, we've seen many times, in media of concerns of certain board members at GVB that are being investigated, currently being investigated. The only thing I can say is for some shenanigans going on, and some of them actually had a conflict of interest in providing funding where they voted to send that money directly to where they would benefit from. And this is all being investigated. There have been other situations that probably are going to be unraveled after this investigation, because we all know that once an investigation starts, other things pop up too during that time. So this, Mr. Chair, and then we heard from one board member. One board member, he said, well, if I have to provide my financials, then I'm going to quit. Wow. Why did you sit on the board in the first place then? Right? Show me the money. But if you're going to sit on a board and oversee $23 million of funds, I think you need to show your financials. I think it should be required, and I'm surprised it's not in here. So I ask my colleagues to think about that. That if anybody who wants to sit on a board but is too afraid to show their financials, well, they must be hiding something. And I don't want that individual sitting on that board. Because the taxes I pay, I work hard, and I pay to the government, and I want to ensure that that money is being spent correctly and is not used for somebody's own personal reasons in any way. So I still ask my colleagues to please support this amendment. This will definitely change the playing field when it comes to making sure everyone is accountable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone like to speak? Or is there any objection to this? I thought I propped that. Are there any objection to this amendment? Objection? All in favor, please raise your hand for this amendment. Senator Chris.
Mr. Chair.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Did we ask for anybody to speak on this?
Does anyone want to speak? I was just wondering does anyone want to speak? It didn't look like anyone wanted to speak to this. That's why I asked if there was an objection. Senator Luan, you wanted to speak to this? Okay, please feel free.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we've had a couple roundtables on this situation, and it was agreed upon, of course, that be treated like any other boards or commission, that we have full disclosure. I know years back in the creation, I know that businesses lobbied that they be exempt from such situation. And why should that be? Why should that be? Why should that happen? Todi komisyon na magagigihuzong debi na masamiti STE afazanya kogwa conflict kanto gagigibangku tagano siya. Lafa na put matupare the Guam Visitors Bureau. It's even bulas sa lapid niya. Tazaga mga masamiti afa Guåhan niya. And pobliaw, but timigay sa lapi mo, debi non sa gani gigubet na mento, afa siya zom mo, afa Guåhan mo. Lo unrequal, bulas sa lapi mo, the gagyo ginstig you on board, mungaw, like nagubet na mento. Tazaga, dinisita ng samiti afa Guåhan mo. Tazaga. The Guam Visitors Bureau ani mafutmastin na agency para makuntua mo na STE titulon Samoru. When it was formed, when the labeling legislation in regards to the Guam Visitors Bureau was promote the culture. Promote. That's what's happening right now. That's what's going on right now. For the longest time, it kind of deviated from that. We see the benefits of the different villages that are prospering because of that. As a matter of fact, our own Skinner, our Plaza de España right now, who is manning that? Who's securing that? Who's paying for the security over there? The Guam Visitors Bureau. We're not. We're not. Why should some boards, commission members be exempt from submitting their financial disclosures? Government funds. Yes, we have heard a couple people that said, "Oh, yeah, if we're going to have to submit, we're not going to be a part of it." Okay. Why, we want parity. We just finished a previous amendment in regards to parity. In regards to studies that need to be done regarding parity, and really is this the pay that's really actually should be had? Well, whole boards and commissions here in Guam, and even ourselves here, elected officials, appointed officials, have to submit. This is the government of Guam. Government of Guam funds and expenditures and how that's being done. And if you have a conflict of interest, that's said, but you have to submit your financials. We do. Other boards and commissions have to as well. We're just wanting parity in this whole situation. Parity is the whole situation. And of course, in the situation with the Guam Visitors Bureau, we have a situation where there's a study that, I don't know where it's at this point, but it's been turned over to not only the Office of Public Accountability, but the Attorney General's office. On the criminal side, and supposedly board members were involved. What is the outcome? We don't know at this point. But I know that the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of Public Accountability.
Thank you,
With
Senator.
that, I support this amendment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Ron. Does anyone else like to speak to this? And I know there is an objection to this amendment. So that being said, there is an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand so I can do a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh. Yeah. Wait. Did you vote in favor? Oh, then. One more time, everybody, please raise your hand so I just see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Motion passes. Folks, it is 11:41. Let's come back at 12:45 or 1 o'clock. Come back at 1 o'clock, okay? 1 o'clock, and then we'll continue, and hopefully we can wrap this chapter, because there are many amendments that we already found that will probably not be heard, because it was already entertained in the previous chapters. So it will speed it up. Thank you. See you all. We're in recess till 1 o'clock.